Well, hi, Special K. How are
Hey,
you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Welcome to this week's Roundtable. We may or may not have other people joining us today, so we'll let them pop in as they have time. And you in Da Nang, Vietnam, are experiencing your first, what kind of typhoid? What typhoon?
Typhoid.
Typhoid.
Typhoid,
I'm
yeah.
trying to think. It's not a hurricane. What is it? First potential typhoon.
I'm not dying of disease at the
No, no,
moment. I
no.
don't.
It's a lot of rain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually not too bad. It's not raining all the time. There's breaks in it, so
Excellent. Well, we understand that if you should lose power, that will be what the
yeah, that might happen. Yeah.
and if you freeze up, it could just be stressing the Vietnamese internet a little bit. But my internet here in Austin, Texas, gets stressed too. So it's just the
Yeah.
nature of it. Well, I'm excited about our topic today. It's clear communication,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you and I both work in coaching, and I work primarily with executives and in a business environment,
Yeah.
small businesses or large corporations with leaders and
Yeah.
teams and things. And it's remarkable the sort of lack of training around communication. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how quickly that can be reversed with some pretty simple steps, pretty clear understanding. But it's like everything else of value, it's not taught in schools, so
Yeah.
we kind of learn it on the fly in our jobs, in our relationships, in our families, with our friends. And so, okay, do you want to say anything before we go to my amazing slides?
No, let's just dive straight into your
Okay.
perfect slides.
Okay. I'm going to minimize this. Oh, okay. So it's telling me I can't. So let's see. Oh, I can share. This is my problem. Uh, share. Okay, here we go. Share. Okay, now I'm sharing, and now I'm going to go into present mode.
Yep.
Okay, present. Woohoo! I got a
All
kick
right.
out of the picture of this young boy screaming into the microphone. It's like,
Yeah.
can you hear me? So, I know sometimes in communication, it feels like, are you speaking a different language, or do I need to talk louder or
Yeah.
slower, or what is the disruption here? So I got a kick out of that picture. Okay, clear communication. Okay, so I have three categories of communication. One is communication at work, and so I
Mhm.
work in this field a lot.
Yeah.
And in the research that I'll share, the links in the description of the video, the post-pandemic work has changed a lot, and it has definitely driven changes in communication.
Yeah.
With remote workers, there's a huge adoption of Zoom and of Teams, Microsoft Teams, and notices about team meetings and who's going to be in the meeting and who's going to present what. And do you put your camera on or leave your camera off? All the protocols to try to stay in touch with people that are not coming into an office anymore. So also the loss of the kind of the stucco that keeps the bricks of people together at work,
Yeah.
bumping into them at the water cooler, bringing
Yeah.
donuts in the morning because it's somebody's, special day, passing out little invitations to the retirement party. All
Yeah.
of those pieces are gone when we work remotely. And so people have been inventing, how to do those updates, how to do one-on-one meetings. I know Angela works with people writing their resumes, updating their LinkedIn's, and she finds there's a huge shift to interviewing people on Zoom. And
Yeah.
so commonly, and maybe your only interview with people happens over the computer on Zoom. You
Yeah.
don't physically go to the building and shake hands, meet the person, and sit down across from them. So
Yeah.
there's been a huge level of adaptation that's been required post-pandemic for communication at work. And then to have fluid communication across multiple platforms as well as in person. So we find there's a big generational difference in the workplace about communication. So digital natives, the younger generations, are very comfortable, responding to emails on their phone, having multiple things, two screens going on at the same time, the one they're working on, the one the meeting is happening on, and older people
Mhm.
talk on the phone, or we want to see
Yeah.
your face and talk to you because it most closely resembles the tens or 20 or 30 years of the way we communicated about work. And
Yeah.
so there's been a generational difference in this adaptation about multiple platforms. Well, did you text that to me? Could you email it to me? Because I can't open that application in my text. And other people say, couldn't you text it to me? Why do we have to talk on the phone? So
Yeah.
how do we have navigating those generational differences in the way we communicate across multiple platforms? And we've all just had to adapt to that. And then there's been a breakdown in sort of the work relationship management with leadership and in building and maintaining trust. When you
Mhm.
don't bump into people, when you can't chat in the elevator on the way down to your lunch break, there's again that stucco or that glue that holds relationships together is missing unless it's very deliberately inserted. And it's been clunky as we come out of the pandemic when people have icebreaker conversations before the
Mhm.
weekly budget meeting. Well, did you see this
So
movie? Go ahead.
let me jump in real quick. So I agree with you, but there is also a positive side
Oh, yes.
to um
Oh,
the
yes.
communications done remotely. So one thing is you're avoiding the gossip.
Yes.
You're avoiding
Mostly.
constantly seeing people that you don't get along with.
Yes.
Like so it's positive for the communications in some ways, but in
Hmm.
other ways it's negative. There's less bonding, and so
Hmm.
I agree
Yeah.
with
And
you.
I know leaders have written articles about, it feels clunky to do icebreakers before a meeting or to have a
Hmm.
little catch up, roundup, like tell us how your weekend went.
Hmm.
But it's sort of forced because we don't know how to do this digitally, where everybody learned how to do it just in person. And
Yeah.
so part of the change is to find ways that people are comfortable with this. Extroverts miss, being in touch with people in person. Introverts are
Yeah.
thrilled to be working at home. And
Yeah.
so, this whole reset,
Yeah.
we're still responding to it. Yeah, I think there have been a number of good things. I think there's been tremendous efficiencies that have been created. Okay, let's look at our next slide. Difficult conversations. So I have a little
Yeah.
article about, how to talk about things you're upset about without arguing, like learning conflict resolution
Yeah.
tools. And some people were raised in families where people figured it out and they never went to bed mad, or they
Yeah.
settled things before they sat down to dinner, or, and other people, they have no conflict resolution skills unless they were taught them in the workplace or in
Right.
some job requirement or with a therapist. And so lots and lots of difficult conversations have happened again because the world has just shifted so much. So the link that I'm sharing in the video notes talks about this sequence. If you're going to have a difficult conversation, whether it's just this work was subpar, or I don't think we should keep seeing each other, or I'm not happy with how you spent that money, whatever it is, to open and set the table with positive statements. Because in a difficult conversation, people can start with fear. Like, I don't know, are they breaking up with me? Am I being fired? Am I being put on probation? What, tell me that we're still okay while we have this conversation, or
Yeah.
tell me that we're not, and I'll be preparing myself for this. So
Yeah.
a positive statement can just reset, hey, we're doing fine, except I want to talk about this one thing, oh, okay, I'm safe. Then to
Yeah.
use I statements like I'm having this problem rather than you're a jerk because you did this thing.
Mhm.
So to not be accusatory in difficult conversations, just to say my experience of this thing we're talking about was the following, because you can accurately portray your experience The other person's job is to portray their experience of it, to make
Yeah.
clear requests. So in difficult conversations, we can have emotional words like, this has got to stop, or what were you thinking? And
Yeah.
those are not helpful, again.
Mhm.
But if you have clear requests, like we need to set a budget limit of this, let's try this next month. That's what would work for me. Could you be down with that? So having clear requests. Again, the person who's engaged with you in the difficult conversation, you're painting the lines on the road. Okay, we're talking about
Yep.
this. Okay, this is what you think you need, instead of, I don't even know what you need, and you're telling me you can't tell me what you need, so how do we get that done?
Yeah.
Then the next is to listen to the feedback from the person you're having the difficult conversation with. And I always take notes because it organizes my mind, but some people can take notes in their head, and not to respond to the, but you did this, or but last time it went like this, to just listen to what the person has to say until they feel they've gotten it off their chest, they've said what they had to say, and then share feedback. Like, I didn't know this was such a problem for you. Or we've been doing it this certain way, and I thought that was fine. Now you want to do it a different way. If you'd given me a heads up about doing it a different way, I would have complied with that, but you didn't. Like, this feels out of the blue. But I
Yeah.
can comply with doing it a different way, and let's make that plan. So there is kind of a science to having difficult conversations, and they happen at work and with friends and families, and they happen about
Mhm.
politics and about the pandemic and all
Mhm.
kinds of things. And so this skill is useful. So,
Yeah. I got
hey,
you.
Jonathan,
What's up, man?
Hey, morning.
good. Welcome
Mhm.
from California, Northern California. We're going through my amazing slides. So
Oh, let's watch
we're
them.
talking about clear communication. So these are some tips about how to have difficult conversations,
Mm,
how to get people can be heard, changes can be made without necessarily arguing or demeaning the other person that you want to change with. Okay, so
mm,
and we talked about changing communications after the pandemic because so many people work remotely and so on. So
mm.
okay, here's my third slide. I love the picture of this woman. Nonverbal communication, like she doesn't have to say anything. We know she's like, I tried, but this plant is half dead. Like, I tried.
Mhm.
So this is how it turned out. Like, and I think the studies say that 80% of communication between humans is nonverbal.
Yeah.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
So video conversations are really helpful compared to phone conversations, because you're not just listening to the words and the tonality, or when there are spaces or gaps, you actually see the smile or the shrug, or like, I did the best I could. So learning something about body language. And then when you're holding up your end of the conversation, to provide some body language cues for the person you're engaging in communication with. So you're on the same page, whether it's nodding or whether it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, or let me think about that. Those nonverbal cues grease the wheels of smooth and clear communication. We also have had all the experience of somebody looking at their watch, or they're doing scrolling on their phone while you're talking to them. It's like, okay, they're distracted, or they are actually not interested in what I have to say. Another nonverbal communication is to delay the conversation, to cancel it, or to ghost someone. And so, though you are giving messaging that doesn't include
Mhm.
verbal communication or written communication, but the message
Mhm.
is sent, like, this person doesn't respond to me anymore. I'm left on red. And okay, so that's communication nonetheless. It just didn't involve words. So, okay, here's now my favorite part, the memes.
Mm.
We're at the memes. Okay, I like this one to the left. This funny
Mm.
meme. It says, do I overshare with people I just met?
Overshare with
Can you see it? Or do I disassociate and go nonverbal? Like, which
Mhm.
of these things do I do? I love this one with the gingerbread man who's sitting in the doctor's office. And the doctor says, sore knee. Have you tried icing it? Like, icing like frosting instead of
That
icing like
that is cute. It's a cute
it's
one.
like putting
That one.
ice on it. Yeah, and we do sometimes with our words. We're like, what? I like this other one too about perspective. I think it's really helpful. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is perspective, not the truth. Marcus Aurelius. And on the
Mm,
one side, you could see it looks like 4. And on the other side, no, they clearly see 3. And so you cannot have the same opinion and both be right. You know, perspective is so important from your point of view. And so I think it's helpful when we're communicating to not be certain that we are right. Okay. I love this nonverbal meme here of just doing a high five. It's like, okay, we're in agreement. Okay, this was fun. This is actually from a Japanese site. So they're high-fiving as an ideogram without words. And it really does communicate kind of non-verbally. And then this is just for fun. I forget what these are called minions. Arguing with a woman is like getting arrested. Everything you say can and will be used against you.
true.
Yeah.
Also, I agree.
So that's just funny. Okay. So we'll stop sharing and talk about how important it is to have clear communication. I
Yeah.
come to mind something I'll share. Brian has some thoughts, and then we'll come to Jonathan. Um, there was a person I was working with who was leading a scientific team in an agricultural field, and they were finding better ways to grow rice, which is like a primary food group for the whole world, rice. And so growing it efficiently is very helpful for populations around the world. And so they had scientific development teams, a couple of them in India. And this person I was working with was here in Texas. And there was a lot of miscommunication. Part of it was time zones. You know, when she would leave work, they'd be coming into work. And part of it was English was a second or third language for a number of the people on the development team in India, the scientific team. And then there were cultural differences. There's a very clear hierarchy in India about who's the boss and who's supposed to do what. And you kind of follow regimens of orders of who's telling others to do what. Where in America, we've gone to very flat teams. You can have 3 bosses that are not really your boss, and only one of them makes a hiring or a decision to give you a raise. But this one's in charge of 20% of your calendar for this project. This one's in charge of 40%. So we've really flattened the hierarchies here in America, but they have not done that in other parts of the world. So all of those things stacked up against clear email communication. And so as we looked at how come the people on the scientific development team in India could not deliver to the people in Texas what they wanted when they wanted it, they wouldn't follow a simple protocol of this is what I want, this is who I want it from, and this is when I want it. And they were just in these sort of Facebook run-on conversations. And they were asking people to go back to the 5th email back when I said about how I want that thing to happen. And then, okay, here's another like instance of we've made a little bit of a change about that. But if you weren't up to date on the whole email chain that could be 10 or 15 emails long, everybody lost the thread about what was supposed to be delivered by when. And so not only making sure every email states very clearly who's supposed to do what by when, but that a routine summary is offered at the end of the week, at the first part of the week. Here's where we are on that project, to just do the gracious thing of putting everybody in the team on the same page. And if there's disagreement, like, wait, no, I thought that wasn't due till December, you can catch it up and say, last month we moved it to November. Oh, okay. And it just deliberate, clear communication greases the wheels for everybody to perform well. And it's leadership and management's responsibility to do that, not to ask people to go 15 emails back for the change that was made on the one thing, whatever. So in business, clear communication can be a challenge, and we're all working globally now with different cultures and different languages and different time zones. So I think it's never been more important to pay attention to clear communication, at least in a business environment. Okay, that's my thing. Brian, you had some thoughts, and then I want to hear
Okay.
Jonathan, your thoughts.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of communication problems in a lot of offices, and it's weird because a lot of times they have a big emphasis on clear communication,
They just
and there,
don't do it.
and yeah, and there will be all these meetings about it, and then it just never happens. Like I think there's a lot of companies that are like that.
Mhm,
Um, but yeah, like I want to bring up some different kind of dimensions of communication just to throw in some different topics we can discuss here. So one idea is if you look at communication, so you have calm, and then in the middle of the word you have like kind of like unity. And I think with ideal communication, you're trying to like really unify, like where you really see like eye to eye, and you feel the energy, the emotion of the person. I don't think we get that a lot of times. I think there's a lot of like misfiring and misperception.
mhm,
But I think ideally you create like a somewhat of a unity between you and the other person. So, we did aliens the other last week or whatever. One theory I've read of telepathy on how it works is that certain like alien beings or whatever, they can actually match their vibration to someone else, like an exact match. And when you become an exact match on frequency, you start to have the same thoughts and feel the same feelings. Like
mhm.
you're like almost existing as the same soul for like
There's a shared
a few minutes.
experience, a
Yeah.
shared
So
experience.
that's one theory of how that could happen. So that would be like a true unifying communication. We don't really have that as humans so much, but there's also indirect versus direct communication, and when is one better than the other? So
Mhm,
when we talk about clarity, when we talk about clear communication, we're generally favoring direct communication, right? But sometimes it's better to be indirect, just based on the situation. Like if you're flirting, and you want to be kind of playful and a little bit mysterious, you can't just be like 100% direct. Like
right,
that's going to kill the vibe. So
right.
sometimes clear communication, like super clear, isn't always the best.
Mhm,
It depends on the situation. Definitely in a business environment, it's great to be clear.
mhm,
I think like 90+% of the time, like you want clear communication there.
mhm,
Like in like a military situation, definitely you want clear communication, like 100% of the time, probably. Um, and but in other situations, you mess around with someone, like maybe it's better to be indirect, or maybe there's value to being a little bit unclear. What's up, Zian?
What's up, man?
And what's up? And yeah, I also think like with the office communication stuff that you're bringing up, I do think in the workplace you have to play the game a little bit of office politics.
mhm,
So it's not always best to just be like fully authentic in that situation.
mhm,
Um, you do have to get along with your boss. You have to get along with your coworkers. So like
mhm,
if they have an opinion that you really disagree with, like you kind of got to play the game a little bit.
mhm, mhm,
Um, so that's another example of where it might be good to not be fully clear
mhm,
or maybe fully authentic with your opinion. Although I think it's good to be authentic in general,
mhm,
but there are times where you kind of you have to go along to get along. You have to play the game a little bit to just
mhm,
keep things running smooth
mhm,
with people you got to see every day, or with your boss.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and yeah, you mentioned nonverbal communication, and I think a really interesting question is that clear?
mhm,
Like, I wonder what you guys think about this. Like, do you get a clear feeling of the emotion of someone else when they speak to you? Or is it usually unclear?
mhm,
Or is it clear sometimes, other times not clear? Like,
mhm.
how clear, how much can we clarify the nonverbal communication? I think that's an interesting question. Or is it always going to be somewhat mysterious? Or
Mhm.
can we learn to kind of intuitively pick up on it.
Mhm.
Like, how clear is body language? I think that's a great question. Can you get to where it's like almost an almost exact reading on someone, or is it always kind of murky? I don't know. I wonder what you guys think about that. Um, yeah, and the other thing about clear communication is sometimes even if you articulate something really well, that doesn't mean you get it across.
True.
Mhm.
Like I've been in those situations where I'm like going out of my way to really be super clear with my words, really explain it in detail, and it's not getting across. Like, so sometimes the person you're talking to, they're just not a match
Right.
for the
Mhm.
like frequency that you're trying to communicate.
Right.
It's not,
Mhm.
that's not something they're aware of. That's not something they've explored. It's just not gonna get across, you know? Um, so even if you speak really clearly, that doesn't mean someone receives it clearly.
Right.
Mhm.
So, these things happen. And I think it's interesting to ask the question, taking communication to different dimensions here. Can we get clear communication from our body, like our gut instinct? You know,
Yes.
how clear is that for people? Because people use these words. People say, "Oh, my gut told me this was wrong," or "My gut told me I shouldn't go into that
Right.
place."
Right.
Well, how clear of a signal is that? I think that's an interesting question. How much do you trust that?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how clear of a signal do you get from your intuition? Can you clarify? Can you enhance the signal to where you get a more clear signal? Or is it always going to be kind of murky? Like, I think that's interesting to explore what the possibilities are with that. And also, Jonathan, like you work with higher self, which I think is a very fascinating thing.
Mhm.
Can you establish a clearer connection to your higher self, or to the concept of
A
that, or to,
feedback loop. A
yeah,
feedback
can
loop.
you establish that in daily life? Can you start to get a clear sense of the presence of that, or the guidance
Mhm.
coming from that, or guidance coming from, your intuition or subconscious or whatever, people want to label this type of stuff.
Mhm.
Yes, because some people are not ready to believe that, because to your point, to late the finish, there are some humans that are not able to even um, entertain the idea that there's something
Yes.
non-physical that it's inside them that they can get access to, but that's fine. But yeah, we can continue.
I totally agree. And I kind of want to respond to that real quick. So my thing with consciousness is, where does it start and where does it stop? Like, we really don't
Mhm.
know how far our consciousness can go. And actually, the only way you will know is if you try to push past the boundaries, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because anything else is just an assumption.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's just an assumption built on your memory of your experiences. So
Mhm.
that's all you know of human consciousness. So then you just say, oh, that's probably all there is. But that's just an assumption, though.
Yes.
You can only know by trying to reach past that. But yeah, another thing I've learned with clear communication is it's not always about like using the correct words, or like making strong arguments. It's like you have to learn how to get through to certain people. So this is what I've started to learn as I've gotten older. Like, certain people respond to this, other people respond to this, other
Yes.
people respond to that. Yes, like you kind of have to learn, like, this person, they'll resonate with it if I say it in this way with this tone, and I kind of like have fun talking about this topic with them, and like then they'll get it. They'll be with me. Like they'll resonate with it. It's getting communication through clearly. It's not always about, oh, you said all the sentences correctly and
Right.
you made, reasonable arguments. It's
Right.
like you kind of have to know how to resonate with that person, how to emotionally connect, like what they respond to, what they resonate with. And like when you tap into that and you speak to them in that way, they will tend to get it a lot more. I've noticed. Um,
Mhm.
and so uh I think we also kind of have to learn how to say things without saying them sometimes. Now, is that clear? Is that unclear?
You're going into the realm abysm of nonverbal communication.
There it is, right into the fucking abyss. And a question I have for all of you guys, which I'm curious to hear is, do you feel understood when you communicate? Like what percentage of the time? I'm just curious how you feel about that. Or do you feel like you fully understand others when they communicate to you? Like what's the percentage here? Like I wonder if in general we're only picking up 50% of what people are communicating to us, and they're only picking up 50% of what we're saying to them. I wonder what the percentage is. Like I wonder what you guys think about that. So I'll open that up to you guys if you want to jump in.
Let's start with Jonathan. I know you have some thoughts about communication and the three, excuse me, the three areas where kind of regular, excuse me, workplace communication.
Yes, definitely. I wanted to start before I forget about there was one meme about ghosting. That one was it was funny because it comes to non-verbal communication. Let's put it into perspective. For example, somebody ghosts you. That means there's no communication whatsoever. However, the message, it is, if you are in tune with life, it is the loudest message you can ever get in your life. It is so loud. It is so in your face. There is so much communication in silence that humans have to be, as long as you are a little bit more perceptive, you can interpret, like, there is so much. For me, ghosting is not nothing. It is like a paragraph. It is like a book. It means I don't want to talk to you for whatever reason. There is all the reasons why. So it is like a whole paragraph of like, I do not care about you. So it is not nothing. It is silence. It is nonverbal, but it means I don't give a fuck about you. That is the message. It's there. It's so clear. It is a ghosting, but it's like it's there, and you just have to read it. Now, how do we come in tune with that dimension? Before, this is funny because before I even came in contact with the term body language, I was let's not forget that I grew up in the ghetto, for example. Like, I grew up in a third world country where humans that are like dangerous are walking around you. So I had to learn how to read people's intentions. For example, I was actually lucky to have that experience. Like, I was walking to school having to look around and be like, is this human like friendly, or is this human trying to take my backpack because he thinks there's something valuable in it or on it? And that is all nonverbal communication. Then when I grew up, let's say when I was in my after 25, I came across some books about body language. First book that I started reading, I was like, it was boring because it was by an FBI agent, like an expert. I was like, this is boring. I know this when I was 5.
Nice.
But I can see for someone that doesn't have that experience, it can be like an introduction to like somebody's like behavioral movements, facial expressions, something. Anyways, for me it was extremely boring, so I couldn't. So I've never had to dive deep into that stuff, because then I learned that I just trust my instincts. You can call it. We can go into the gut, like the gut. My gut tells me that. However, how good do you keep your gut? You can also trust only so much because probiotics, all these all these
Do
billions
a
of like
parasite cleanse and then
uh-huh
trust your gut.
all,
Yeah.
all these billions of
Probiotics.
entities that are living inside you.
Yeah.
If they're not on your side, they
Mhm,
might give you the wrong ideas.
mhm, mhm.
That's funny.
So it is interesting also. Mm. But yeah, that is actually interesting. Going back to one of the most important things that I wanted to share, which is the ghosting part, because let's now that you brought into the light the nonverbal communication,
Mhm, mhm.
it is nonverbal, but there is so much communication. Like when
Yeah.
I walk on the street or I look at someone, you don't have to like I don't care if you say good morning, good night. I don't
Mhm,
give a fuck if you look at me. I just I just see the end, like I see beyond what's there without you even have, because when you speak you're actually manifesting something, you're actually creating something.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, I don't trust what you're trying to create. I can see many layers, like it sounds
Yeah.
strange, but like you can say something and then I by the time you say something I already know what you were going to say. So non-verbal communication, it is I would say is something between an art, a I will actually add that is not just an art, it is like a faculty that we have, just like imagination, sense of smell,
Mm,
taste,
mm,
touch. I will say is one of those things that we have. It's just like a hearing. It
mm,
is one of the faculties that we have that nobody actually teaches you how to develop. I was lucky that I had to develop it by myself, but I'm sure that there are some environments that they teach you how to develop nonverbal communication so that you can actually communicate something if you really want to, or you can read something if you really need to.
mm.
Um, so it's a power. It is extremely powerful. Myrna was saying that there's like 80% of like 90% or something.
Mhm.
I will say 98% non-verbal. Like even if you don't open your mouth, I already read. Like, like you can say anything you want, but it will make no. Most of the times, it won't. It doesn't change. So yeah, non-verbal communication is extreme. When it comes to work environments, Brian, you were talking about direct, indirect.
Yeah.
That is interesting because if you're if you are playing the game of living in a society where everybody is going indirect, for example, in United States, what I have noticed is that everybody plays the indirect game. At work, everybody is extremely politically correct. Like even if somebody is about to die because he's doing like something stupid, they're going to be like, oh my god, you go girl, or like you go boy, or something.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
encourage these things. um
Yeah.
there is a risk on going direct. let's not kid or let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
There is a risk if you're going direct. um how much of a risk are you willing to take to see life as it is? Because for all I know, I could be dead right now, and why would I care? Like honestly, if I really think about it, you can be like, all the nonsense is so much nonsense that you can be like, it is funny that when you can go back to your sense and be like,
Yeah.
so, but let's not forget that some humans have jobs and enterprises, and just life itself has some like, it's like a cocoon of like layer after layer of nonsense of communication. So when you go direct, this is something that I have learned. Every time I go direct, I have been ended like either fired or I had to quit when I made the direct
Yeah. Yeah.
expression, because most of the time the humans that you're going to come in contact with, they're not ready to handle direct, like not politically correct things that you're about to say, especially at work. Like for example, there have been many times when, the coworker, let's say for example, I am a male, female comes and she's attractive and I'm like, hey, your ass looks great on those, like, and it's like they're gonna be like, what, thank you. Yeah, she said thank you, but then somebody else look and then they say, hey, this human said this one. So direct communication is great. All the managers that I have had when I used to work with management, they will be like, one time I actually, when I was living in Vegas, there was this particular, again, it comes back to direct. It was like, hey, listen, you're the manager of the store, or I think you're extremely attractive. And if I'm working with you, just know that all I can think of is those shoes you wear, those pants you wear, those leggings you wear. Don't do it with me because I'm thinking other things. You distract me so much. Next thing you know, it's very pleasant. However, it's direct communication, and because of the same reason, I have been like accepted or rejected. It goes either way, so there's no like a to the CN point of like reject, like not feeling like shame. Is like every time you communicate something as it is, you're going to face something very peculiar. It's either going to go extremely, extremely, extremely well, or it's going to go extremely, extremely bad, because it's not going to be taken the way you think it's going to be processed. And I'll leave it like that. Let's keep going. Who wants to come next?
I'd love to comment on a couple of those things and invite Zian in. So one of the questions as a leader, as a manager, as an owner of a business is you may be thinking you're communicating your message clearly. It makes sense to you, but you have to take into account the receiver. What kind of receiver is processing the communication you just gave? The email or what was said in the meeting or the memo that's posted outside the conference room door. Everyone has their own filters and their own stuff. And so there are people whose identities are wrapped up in how well they do at work. And there's other people who work for a check and get the hell out because their identities are not wrapped up in what they do for work. They work for money to pay for the life they're trying to live. And then there's this, spectrum of people. And so leaders, managers have to understand the receiver of that information.
I have something funny to say. I was thinking, based on your expression, I was thinking, I'm definitely on the spectrum.
It's so funny. You're on the full truth spectrum. Well, I got a kick out of a story that a meme that Justin shared with me once when he was living in Brazil. That there's a tendency, and it's like this is just a cultural thing. It's not true for everybody, but there's some female behavior in dating, and they make memes about it in Brazil, that you can't go an hour without sending a text message, or she thinks you broke up with her. So the meme was, I took a nap for 2 hours, and then here's the text messages like, how come you're not responding? What did I say? What's wrong? Fine, I never liked you anyway. And he wakes up from the nap and what happened? What happened? And so there's a miscommunication then, and I hear this a lot. I don't work in the dating field like Zian and Jonathan do. I mean, it's always ancillary to other things they're doing, but to require that someone text you in the morning and text you at night and set up these little tests every day or every other day. And it's about it's like a dog that never wants you to stop petting them. And then when you
Mm,
stop, their little paw is on your leg, like, wait, you have to keep petting me. Okay, pet me
mm,
more. And then you stop. Okay, no, wait, keep petting me. And it's like, well, this maintenance of this is a little bit nuts, right? But if that's what she needs to be happy and you don't want to supply that, okay, we maybe this doesn't make sense. Or even asking, why do I need to continually prove to you that I read and reply to your text messages 4 times a day? Like, what is this about? But to understand what is the level of communication somebody needs. And other people are like, okay, we'll just chat on Friday. Like we don't need to talk before then. We'll make our plans to go out on Friday after work and figure out where we want to go. For some
mm,
people, that's like, fine, we don't need to talk between now and Friday. And others, it's like, no, must talk every day, must reinforce, reinforce. And so, I'm thinking about this, Zian, with you, that Jonathan has mentioned this also. When you meet someone new, like in a relationship space, they have this whole backstory that you have to deal with. And they may have grown up in a household where you walked on eggshells so that you didn't tip over your mom or tip over your dad. And now we have anger and fighting and they're throwing dishes, whatever.
mm,
You
mm,
learn how those nonverbal signals as a child, like dad's mad, I'm going to go hide out in my room, or I'm going to go outside and play because no good thing happens if I stick around. And
mm,
so, and you don't even have words to put with that when you're 7 or 8 or 9, something's brewing. I don't know what it is. I'm going to get out of the way. So people have all this backstory, whether they
mhm,
work for you or whether they want to date you or whether they're your neighbor or your friend. And while you're communicating with them, they're filtering it through that backstory you don't know anything about. And so there was this story about Vietnam that I shared with Brian since he's living there, that soldiers back in the 70s discovered that when native populations in Vietnam were nervous, like here come American soldiers with weapons, and they're nervous, they would laugh. That was a cultural way to respond to being nervous, like we don't know what's going on here. But Americans don't treat laughter that way. They thought the laughter was mocking, like we don't care about you and your guns. They think they're going to take over our country. So Americans were offended.
That's funny.
Americans were offended, and the Vietnamese were just nervous. Like, what's going on? There are men with guns in our village right now. So, and because, Brian, you've been in 4 countries now as a digital nomad, and a lot of us either have lived in other countries or people from other countries. I mean, even culturally, is this disrespectful to you? It's like, I just asked what time we were getting together. I'm not sure how I disrespected you. And so so many ways for this to break down, so much baggage dragging behind some people. Zian, how do we ever communicate at all? How does it ever happen?
Um, so this is a great topic, and also a challenging one. I have been listening to Esther Perel podcasts for the last few days. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she is a sexologist and a relationship expert. She in one episode, in her podcast, she'll be sitting down with one person who's having uh, trouble with a certain area of their life, and usually that when she sits down with one person, it's about their relationship to someone else, or she'll sit down with a couple who are romantically invested, or even friends who might have are reaching a tipping point in their relationship. So there was one episode where she sat down with a woman who was a lesbian, and then she she got into a romantic relationship with a guy who was just a friend before she broke up with her wife. So she was talking about how this woman was talking about how she was dealing with a shift in her identity, you know, being a lesbian and then having sexual feelings for a man who she was friends with. And she talked about Esther, she gave context to what they're experiencing by, in one way, addressing that they need to make space for differentiated experiences. And so that's what we're talking about when we're dealing with communication. Like how well understood do we feel by others? How are others receiving what we say? And it's, as you said, Myrna, what we have to think about what kind of interface this person is using to interact with us. So some people have such a narrow frame of reality that they can't understand us. They don't have the space inside of them to understand differentiated experiences. Their wavelength is so shallow that they cannot understand what we're saying, because they don't live in a reality where their thinking and their ideation is challenged by others. So it causes them to have just a severe disconnect when communicating with people who communicate in ways that might seem totally foreign to them. And it goes back to what you said as well, how some people pride themselves in how well they do at work. And some people just check the fuck out and get their paycheck, and they don't care. They're just trying to survive and make money for the life that they live.
And like you say, Zian, that's okay. You know, you choose to have work serve you, and managers and leaders, they get this guy drops in the slot, does his thing and goes home. Great. I need people in that slot. And also they are no drama. So fine. Don't mess with anything, do your thing and get out. Great. Other people are like, look.
And it can be a great agreement. Like if you communicate that back to like real communication, like the work that I'm doing.
Yes.
This human is the owner of an enterprise. He knows, the owner knows. I'm like, listen, I'm helping you with my service because I am building my own ideal of life. On the meantime, you can provide me with this
resources,
job and this job that I can actually joyfully do for you. I don't mind doing this one, but know that it's not forever. Do know that I appreciate it, but I also know that it's not going to be forever. So it's like a win-win. It's like I'm going to give you, on the meantime that I'm building my process, you help me, I help you. But you do know that I have better plans. And then you have to work with someone that is capable to understand that and actually encourage you to be like, hey, how's your business going? Like, it's like actually pushing you, like I don't want to fire you, but are you almost there? And you're like, wow, interesting, great. With you I can work.
That's awesome, man. That's a really good attitude to have when you're working a job. Like, just see it as a stepping stone to whatever your next thing is, whether that's a promotion at the job or starting your business or whatever. What a lot of people do, which is a really good strategy, it's a little bit off topic, but is you can choose to work a job at a very similar company to a business that you actually want to start. And so you use that to learn the ropes. So like you learn all their internal processes and how everything works, and you're like, okay, now I know all this for starting my own business that's going to do something very similar.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
you know, as long as you're using whatever you're doing to
mhm.
work your way up, that's really good.
Well, and I think it's also, and I want to get back to Zian because I feel like I stepped on your story, Zian, but it's absolutely okay to
I
have
also
no,
didn't mean to.
yeah, no, it's absolutely okay to have no ambition about the work, to be raising a family instead, or to be saving money to take a year off and travel, and that's where all your attention is. And so you're not trying to get ahead on the job. You don't have ambition about work. There are times in our lives where we might experience ambition, but it could be because we want to be an entrepreneurial journey separate from this company, or work is just not that important to us. And so, understanding who you're communicating with, what their value systems are, where they are in the framework of how they value the thing they're engaged with you in. There's a lot to sort of take in. And Brian, you asked, how do you know if you've been heard? How do you know if you've communicated effectively? And I create feedback loops all the darn time because I'm like, does that work for you? Do we know the next steps? Do you have a
Right.
question about what I just said? So you're constantly adjusting and dialing in until you're literally finally on the same page. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just answer that real quick and then we can get back to Zian.
Mhm,
So that's a good strategy verbally to like check to see if
mhm,
someone's hearing you. You can ask them a question like,
mhm,
so are we on the same page? Did you get what I'm saying? Like, and if they kind of like can repeat some of it back to you, they picked up some of it.
mhm,
Um, but I'm kind of more interested in the level that like Jonathan was talking about that, you mentioned the nonverbal level, like that fascinates me more. Like, can someone else really pick up your vibe
mhm,
or your emotion, or can you pick up theirs?
mhm,
I'm wondering what percentage of that is actually transferring.
mhm,
Um, I think there's a lot of like deaf ears, so to speak, with that. I mean, myself included. I'm not saying I can
mhm,
read everybody, but
mhm,
I just think that's very interesting to explore. Like,
mhm,
how much of someone else's emotions or vibe or energy are you really like feeling in the communication?
mhm.
The words are one thing, but you know,
It's the whole package of the communication.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Zian, we've heard the stories about the dad who went out for milk and never came back. I'm going to go get cigarettes, and that's the last anybody saw of him. And people are surprised. Or, I recently knew someone who was dating someone for about a year and then was told, I'm engaged to somebody else. And you're like, WTF? Like, what are you talking about? They had no idea there was this second life that was being led, and none of it had been
Cold game.
disclosed. Full on, and I know men who've done this and women who've done this, so it's not a male female thing, where they're deceiving you. And so while you have an understanding and you've done your confirming, we're going to get together on Saturday. This is what our plan is in 6 months, whatever it is, you think you've got a landscape you understand, and they step in your landscape and step out. You don't even know they're building something else on the side until they say sayonara. So, I mean, there's only so much communication can do. The person you're communicating with has to have some authenticity, some honesty. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, Zian.
So that is a huge hurdle when it comes to communicating and relating to other people. Um, you can have conversations with someone till you're blue in the face, but the other person has to have integrity. They have to have a sense of what is right and what is wrong. And if you haven't vetted this person properly and you don't understand whether their degree of self-centered behavioral thought patterns is relative to their authenticity, or it's out of proportion to their authenticity, then you're in some very treacherous territory. And that's part of what I try to what I do instill in clients who come to me for struggles with relationships and dating. I urge them and I instruct them on how to think outside the box and think beyond what just the information and the experience that they're observing in front of them when they're interacting with this person or whoever. That's something that I'm very well versed in, which is why I teach it to my clients. I pride myself on being like about 5 steps ahead of people in these situations, thinking about, well, is this person lying to me? Is there somebody else in the background? How self-centered is this person? We all have a little bit of, we all can be self-absorbed in some way to some degree. But if it's not relative to your own psychology, to your own experiences, as I said, it's disproportionate, and you're veering off more into the territory of mental illness and psychiatric issues, and personality disorders. I'm always thinking about stuff like that, and a lot of the time, well, I've been. This might sound crazy, but I've been teaching myself to spot girls who keep guys on the back burner in case their current relationship doesn't work out. You can do that too. It's a vibe. It's an intuitive impulse that you're paying attention to, and it's body language. So when you understand what to look for and how to scan your environment and see past the superficial indicators of, oh, she likes me. I think she's still having this conversation with me. She gave me her number, so she's interested in me. You got to think about these things and whether or not someone is actually being authentic with you, rather than just unconsciously taking them at face value and believing that they have your best interest at heart because things went well on a superficial level and it felt good. You got to think about, as much as you're thinking about and focusing on what this person is saying to you up front, right there, face to face, consider what this person isn't saying to you. What issues, insecurities, struggles, and stories are you not aware of that are in their head? Those are things that I constantly check in with myself about. And which is why I've taken it upon myself to teach this to my clients. So I feel like when we start to integrate this knowledge into us, we avoid less frustration, but also at the same time, not everybody has time to do this. This actually takes time. It takes time and energy and effort to integrate this knowledge into us, and to be able to sit down at some point in our day and say, was this person being authentic with me? Does this person see me as a toy that they can use to gratify themselves? Is our connection authentic, or am I just someone who this person is using? So when you think about stuff like this, and you stop focusing on, as I said, the communication aspect, and realize that communication with another person only goes so far, and it can seem like you're on the same page, but when you dig past that and you start thinking about where this person is at psychologically, emotionally, does this person love themselves? Because a person who doesn't love themselves isn't going to be able to love you. They won't be able to empathize with you. It'll seem like that, but you got to really ask these questions. Do you love yourself? And they might say yes. And so you ask for an example. How does that self-love manifest? See, you can't fake the answer to that. When you start asking very real, authentic questions like that, you can't fake answers like that. And they have to be able to back it up with an example. And if they can't, that this person is gaming you.
Well, or they're not ready. They're not ready for that conversation. So I talked to someone the other day who went on a first date, and he said, she's very beautiful. I'm into her. She's into me. But once we started dinner, I felt like I was in some kind of therapist psychological interview, like this crazy level of screening, and it's like, have you ever done this? It's like the list of fears through the projection of, I want to make sure you're not like this. And it's like, you must have just described the worst traits of the last 3 exes you had. And you're screening to me to be sure I'm none of those things. I'm not ready for a deep psychological interview. We're having dinner. I want to know what you think is funny. I
You
mean,
know
I
what?
just, yeah, can we not do
You
this?
know
I
what?
mean,
I would.
there's a place for it, but go ahead, Brian.
You know what I would like to see? I would like to see men when women start doing that shit on first dates. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to call that creepy.
Oh,
It is,
Throw that,
and you can
throw that
always
term, throw that term back on them because like they have a list of 10,000 things men can do that they'll say are creepy. You know what? It's creepy if you want to know my whole entire fucking life history and
please
like
complete
run
the
no.
me through
psychological profile before
your
dessert.
entire fucking test, like when you haven't even started to
and
get to know me at all. Like, I mean,
and and you can always do it because I have done it. I'm like, this was going to be great, but it's not even going to be like, it's not even going to go there. It's not even going to go into the private settings. So
yeah,
you can all,
yeah,
however, Brian and Cian, Myrna, it comes back to, if you do that, it's going to come back to, you're going to do direct communication.
Mhm.
I
yeah,
have done it and I know how it
yeah.
goes. It's not very well uh first like
Receive.
receive is you're going to be like the worst person ever. Oh my god, this guy, and I'm like, well, but yeah, but like, the fuck is wrong with you? What kind of like uh also
Yeah.
I was actually thinking I should be like a fucking like sexuality expert. How, what is these things that these guys go to school for, like sexuality, like what is something
Sexologist.
So
that,
Cian said
sexologist?
sexologist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if I am able and I know step by step how to pick, like how to produce orgasms, how to do this and that, that makes me by association with
That's,
these topics, it makes me
I
an
think you're
expert on the
qualified.
topic. So I am qualified. No school is going to teach me how to give a woman an
I
orgasm.
see this
Do you
dinner
know what, do
conversation.
you know what the woman that had 8 orgasms said to me after she had them? I'm gonna be like, they cannot teach you that in school. So that is something interesting. Like, how can someone qualify that as like a, like you now you can have this? That is something
Oh,
very, very interesting.
I
how do
can
you
see
get a
this first date
certificate? Is that what you're saying?
conversation. Before we go into my psychological profile, I want to let you know a specialty I have.
Yeah.
We'll see
Yeah.
how fast dinner
There you go.
completes.
Yeah.
So, well, Zian, do you
Yeah.
have any more
That's,
thoughts? And then we can do a round and how everybody gets a hold of everybody. So,
Uh, yeah, just I want to emphasize the point of what Jonathan said, looking beyond the physical. Um, and that goes back to what I said, thinking 2 to 5 steps ahead, not not being so, not allowing your better angels to be manipulated, not allowing your need to see the best in people, to not allowing yourself to be manipulated from that point of appeal. Because yeah, most of us want to see the good in people, but that's exactly how you get hurt, by just taking people at face value. Not, you got to be a little skeptical. You don't have to be jaded, but you got to be a bit skeptical and say, well, what didn't this person say? What didn't they talk about? What am I not hearing about? What what's going on in the shadows that they may not want to talk about? And we all have that stuff going on, and that's okay. But at some point, you've got to be aware that the issues that a person may have going on may be more of a liability to you than an asset. And I don't mean to dehumanize people and objectify and say, well, you're a liability and you're an asset, but that's that's part of what relationships are, and that's what I instruct my clients on. It's risk management. Relationships, especially in the beginning, relationships are very risk management oriented, and you have to understand what this person is doing that is going to bring you down and fuck off your life versus what they're going to do to help you rise and support you.
No, I appreciate that. And I think understanding what you want and then communicating that as clearly as you can, and having some sort of understanding about how their receiver works, and did they hear you? Did they understand you? And are they being authentic or truthful with you? So I think every breakup has some amount of deception. You know, someone in the relationship has decided, I think this is kind of over. And then they think, how do I get out? You know, when do I tell them? Before their cousin's wedding, or you know, whatever. You know, there's some sort of, we're going to maintain this until I have my exit door in front of me and I'm out. So I think there's, you know, relationships are messy, feelings get hurt. There's always some risk, but I think if you're authentic and clear about your communication and conscientious about how you're communicating, how it's being received, you know, the world will revolve in a happier cycle if we can be good communicators. So, Brian, do you want to have a last thought, and how do people get a hold of you?
Last thoughts, I'm not really sure. Nothing really comes to mind. I think it was a great conversation for sure. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. So you can people can get a hold of me through lifedesign.org, or my Instagram is Special K Coaching.
Very good.
And yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad you still have power and internet, though the storm is coming.
Yes, there is a storm here, but it's actually not that bad.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, a last thought and how people get a hold of you?
I was actually thinking, I have a last thought. Part of my last thought process was like, what is happening in Brian's experience right now? Because he's in like Vietnam. Like he's like, if I think about it, I was in Vietnam at some point in my life, waiting for a flight from Vietnam to like San Francisco. So I know Vietnam is totally different. So Brian,
Yeah.
what is something that you like? For example, one of the things that I was like, okay, fuck it, Vietnam is amazing because they have only two genders, male and female.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, yes.
So
yeah.
what is something that you like about Vietnam, for example? You don't have to agree or disagree,
Yeah.
but something
Well,
like that you like.
I think everything about Vietnam is great, and actually I love the people too. The people here, I would call them social introverts, which is perfect for me. That's like what I'm like also. I had a conversation with Justin about this, and I was like, dude, I like to spend 80% of my day by myself, and then I like to go out and hang out with people for like a couple hours. That's
the
what I
right
like to do.
amount. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll get bored of myself at some point. I'm like, oh, I want to go see some people. And I go to a cafe or a restaurant or the pool hall or something. And actually, the people here are very similar. So I've seen a lot of people. There's a lot of people that just be sitting by themselves, like at a cafe, just like smoking, drinking a coffee. They'll sit there for like an hour, hour and a half, just get on their phone. They're just chilling. They're thinking. And it's very similar to how I live. Like I mean, I do those kinds of things. So
Do you feel like the actual, like the peace, you know, like there's a saying, like from the old times, like society can only go as fast or slow as like everybody else's is like a byproduct of like society in general. Like for example, if it's a convoy in war, they can only go so fast. Even if you have tanks, cars, you have to go as fast as the guys walking can go, right? So to protect them. Do you feel like when I was in Vietnam, I experienced like the speed of life It is like a
Mhm.
different dimension, like actually like a fucking different dimension. It's like the speed is not that fast. It's like
Mhm,
Yeah.
the whole convoy, in this
mhm,
case, this country, it's more, it's actually more enjoyable, more peaceful than United States. Because whenever
Yeah.
I came back from that flight, I was
mhm.
like, you guys are like in a rush to go fucking nowhere. Like, where are you going anyways? Like, you don't even go where
Absolutely.
you're going and you're going so fast. These guys take their time and it's more enjoyable.
I totally agree. So they have a lot of sense. Vietnamese people have a lot of sense. I think they're really smart, and I can just feel that when I'm around
Mhm,
them. So like speaking to your point, like so if you go to a cafe,
Mhm.
they'll take their time making a drink, but it's like it comes out really like beautiful. Like
mhm,
they'll if you order like a mocha or something, dude, it comes out with like a foam like cream layer on top and then the chocolate on bottom and they like sprinkle some stuff on it and it's like
mhm,
in a nice cup. They give you a nice straw. Like
mhm,
they take their time,
mhm,
but they make it beautiful. Like they're
mhm,
using that time well, and I think they have the proper pace of work. Like
Mm,
they work enjoyably and do quality work, but it's not a rush. And that's exactly how work should be. I mean, that's what everyone should be doing. I actually I completely agree with a lot of things here. Most people ride scooters
yeah.
or like motorcycles. I totally agree with that. And actually they keep the speed limit. It's kind of like India. Like the speed limit on most roads is like under 40. So actually bikes are safe if you keep them under
Mm,
40. Like even
yeah,
if you
yeah.
crash, like you're not gonna die. All you need is a helmet. You'll be fine. Like you'll have some injuries, but
Yeah, it will hurt, but it will be fine.
yeah, yeah, like there's there's a lot of family businesses here, which I completely agree with. So for example, in the apartment complex I'm in, the owner,
Mhm.
she lives on the first floor. And this is
Mm,
an 8 unit, or wait, no, it's a 10 unit apartment complex. That is the fucking perfect business. That makes
it
so
is.
much sense. You're right on location. You don't have to manage 10 different locations. Everything's right there. You have the whole first floor to yourself. As your kids like grow up, they can just move to one of the upstairs units if they like needed.
If
They'd
they
still
want
have
to.
their own, yeah, they'd still have their own space, but you'd still have them like near you. Like
That's great.
there are so many things like that here that just make perfect sense to me, man. Like there's cool little cafes everywhere. I mean,
mhm,
they're beautiful. Everything's
mhm.
affordable. Like I don't know, man. It's great.
Brian has shared two stories with me about Vietnam that kind of shared their identity around family. They still prioritize family.
Mm,
Oh
And
yeah.
in the West, it feels like we're prioritizing you can have kids or not have kids. You know, everybody makes up their own mind. So it's a little more old school in Vietnam, but in one cafe, there was a little 4 or 5 year old girl sitting with her parents, and she would turn in her chair and blow kisses to Brian. So,
Yeah.
and the parents would laugh and find it,
it's
delightful.
cute.
But Brian, yeah,
Yeah,
Brian is
yeah.
like this different thing compared to the Vietnamese he's sitting around, and she's blowing kisses to him, and the parents are laughing. Another time, he was sitting next to a father and a son, and the father was teaching the son how to eat snails. They'd ordered snails, and he's teaching him, well, this is how you get the snail out of the shell. This is how you eat
Yeah.
snails. And so there's this family dynamic that I think is less emphasized in the West now, but is still emphasized in Vietnam.
Well, I think all traditional values have basically been destroyed in the West, including the family. And the family is the basic unit of society. I mean, when that goes, it's kind of see you later. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think society does too well after that. If you look at in history, like any type of society where you had a very significant breakdown of the social order, like especially the family, it's pretty much it's going downhill. Like
Like that.
so, yeah,
That
that
is
that
that is a great topic. We should have one of those topics on the next session because, for
yeah,
example, I have heard in this country, I have heard comments like, I am the next generation of leadership. And I think to myself, if you are the next generation of leadership, this country is going to be a fucked up place that nobody will enjoy living in.
Yes.
How do
Yes.
you opt out? How do you opt out of being in that place?
Um,
Jonathan, before we
and
go too much longer, Brian, you have a last thing? I want to have Jonathan tell people how to get a hold of him.
yeah, well, and by the way, I'm not trying to like be a fear monger, but I think you guys should be ready for the upcoming elections. I think it's quite likely there's going to be a lot of, I don't know, riots, unrest, people super
something,
upset, acting
something.
acting crazy, like maybe
Yeah.
violence. So I don't know. I mean, we'll
Mhm.
see, but I think no matter who wins, there's going to be a ton of people who are super upset. So
Well, we'll see. You know, time
yeah,
will tell us. How do we find you, Jonathan?
After some inner work, there's going to be the point where you're going to come in contact with my consciousness, and that's what I'm there for. Jonathan R. Coaching on Instagram. Of course, alivedesign.org. Also, I created a TikTok account, which is Jonathan R. Coaching as well. And email, you can also reach me at jonathanrcoaching@gmail.com. That is one of the best ways to reach me so that I can help you out with manage, like, to help you out managing situations that you do not know how to go through by yourself.
Mhm.
And then that's what I can guide someone if that's what they need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And Zian, do you have a last thought? And how can we find you?
No last thoughts. I've said all that I want to say. You can find me on on ALD.org.
Mhm.
You can also reach me at HeavenlyWisdom.Coaching@gmail.com or my social media handles, TikTok or Instagram, HeavenlyWisdom_Coaching.
Oh, very good. Well, I have a last thing I want to share. I have a little one here with me today who's too sick to go to a soccer game. So I'm doing a stand-in management of a small child, and he wanted to share his drawing. He's been drawing. I said, I have a meeting. He's like, okay, I want to do this drawing. So
oh
he's
wow,
colored in Venom, who's
Nice.
apparently a
That's
new
nice.
superhero character. He saw the movie, so he asked me to print this out for him so he could color it in. So Venom has joined the meeting, thanks to a elementary school child who couldn't go to the soccer game because he's not
Is
well.
is that your grandson or
No,
just like a
I rent grandchildren. Brian has to produce children for me to have grandchildren, and that's still an open question. So I'm renting other people's children to sometimes get practice as a grandmother. We bake cookies, or he stays with me because he's not feeling well, or I pick them up from school. So yeah,
I'll
so
tell
I'm
you what,
available
if
on a volunteer basis for small children so I can learn the grandmother game and get good at it until such time that
so
Brian
I'll tell you what,
provides me with grandchildren.
if the whole world gets way better, then I'll probably have a kid.
Excellent. Well, and I will bake that child cookies
let's
or print
let's
out
make that
things for
let's make that
coloring.
happen. Let's make that
Yeah,
happen because I
make
have
it
I
happen.
have I'm on like the same way thought process. And
Let's make the
it's
world better so that there may be more grandchildren. Yes. Okay, you guys. It was really
Awesome.
wonderful to have this discussion. Next week, we're talking about friendship, how to be a
Mm.
friend, how to make friends when friendships are complete, all of that. So I look forward to that. And
When to let them go because
yes, sometimes it's like, well, okay, we're done.
Because
Our
friends are
journey's
problems.
complete right here. Okay, you guys, thanks so much for your help. And we'll see
All
everybody in
right,
the next one.
sounds good.